Well, good morning. This is Sunday, May 7th, and we're back at the project here with this urn, and it's time for the unveiling. The glue has had time to cure properly, and I just wanted to emphasize the power of SketchUp. The drawing there shows it as 5 inches, from one side to the other, and if I take the tape and put it on the vessel, and you can daggone it, oh come on, you can see that it's at 5 inches, and the thing I'm trying to convey here is that SketchUp is a free program. You can get it off of sketchup.com, and and it works on Mac and the PC. It's a very shallow learning curve for it, unlike AutoCAD or any of the others. This one, I mean, it takes a little bit of time to play with it, and but after you learn some of the tricks, and there's plenty of videos on the internet you can get that shows you how to get that. And so we're going to take it apart and see what she looks like right now. These Bubba Rands are amazing. They're very, like I said earlier, stretchable. And removing the blue tape. As soon as I can find the end. Ah, pig. Makes it nice that, oh come on, that it comes off so easy. Yeah. All right, so let me get around here where you can see the joints there. There's a little bit of, well, I don't know exactly what that might be, a little bit of glue squeeze out, but that'll disappear, and it looks pretty darn good. Now, the next thing, and I do a lot of thinking when I sleep. I go to bed thinking of a problem, or not a problem, but something to overcome. And my pretend that this is the lid for the moment was how to secure the lid to the vessel so that you don't see it. Don't see a connection, no brads or any dumb thing like that. And plus, they have to pour the cremains into the vessel and be able to secure the lid. And I came up with last night how to do that, and you'll see that here in just a little bit. But it's going to be using a captured nut system, and I'm going to mill out the parts for that here, and I'm going to do that off camera, and then I'll show you how that's going to work. And it should only take me just a few moments to get all of that stuff done. And then this part here, or a section of it, 6 inches square, will go on here to that would be ultimately the top. And we'll pick this up in just a little bit. I gotta get set up here. I just wanted to show the unveiling of it, and I'm happy. I don't see any weird stuff. well, yet. It's got to be some sanding, obviously. So I'll pick this up in a bit after I get these parts milled, and I'll show you how we're going to go do the captured nut thing. See you in a bit. Okay, I've now got the part that's going to go on the bottom of the top. I've got the top milled larger than the 5-inch. This is 6x6, and now the part that's here gets fastened to the bottom of this, and this center line there, I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, you should be able to. So I got to drill holes for partially into this and clear through this part and clear through the center of this part so that this bolt can go up through and get captured in that nut. And you're going to say, gosh, Joe, that thing's a little long. Yeah, well, originally this bolt, the thread stopped there where my thumb is, and I had to put a die on it to get the threads further down. So this is going to get cut off because, and that's the other reason for this recess here, the recess from here to here, so that when that bolt goes through, that it won't shine or protrude, and the bolt as it comes through will go into this captured nut, which will be into this, and a partial hole into this to allow the end of the bolt to go through, so there's enough threads to be into the captured nut. And I'm going to drill those holes now, and I should be able to make this happen if all things are good and wrong. But the part that's cut in there is another piece of walnut. I opted to use the part with the sapwood in it because, well, it's not going to be visible, but it well, yeah, it didn't seem to me to be an issue. So I'll get to that, and we'll. The other thing is that the captured nut is going to be into this part, and it's a 1/4 20, and so the nut is kind of, well, it'll be about a heavy 1/8 in there, so I think it'll be fine. Anyway, I'll drill the holes, and then we'll get back to this in just a bit. Okay, here we are set up over here at the drill press, and I've got a 1/4-inch bit in the coil there, or chuck, and I've already drilled a hole in a piece of scrap to make sure that the bolt clears nice and through. And this is the part that will ultimately hold the captured nut. So I'm going to drill at that point there, which is the center. And that will allow the bolt to come through, and the nut will be on this side. And if everything goes right, okay, now that the capture nut will be down, well, actually on this side, but I need to have a little bit of clearance in what would be the top. And remember, the top is bigger than the box itself right now, but I want it to be a little bit bigger than this, so I'm going to put a 3/8 bit in here, and I've got a backer board here so it doesn't blow out the wood on the other side. There are 3 holes in it in the chuck for a reason. Use every one of them. That's my automated elevator there's another video on my channel that shows this operation here. It's a motor and it raises the table up and down. So I push the switch and then it up. It's not for feeding, it's just for orienting the table in relation to the bit, and then but you still use the quill to feed. Some of these Forstner bits don't have a point on them. You gotta monkey around with seeing if you're in the center or not. That looks like it's pretty close. I moved it. Oh, come on. All right, don't move this time. Come on. Wanting to give me grief here. There we go. All right, I think that'll be enough clearance. So back over to the workbench. Okay, so the captured nut, how that works is you have your hole, see the hole, and then you screw the nut on. Just take it down there somewhere, and you mark out the perimeter of the nut, and then you chisel it out, and that's the reason for the 3/8 hole up here. So part of the nut is up in there, and this, when it gets chiseled out, will receive the nut, and so therefore it's captured. So I'm going to do that right now, or get started on it, or lay it out, and then I'll pick this up in just a bit. Okay, just kicked the tripod. Alright, now I got I put the nut on the end of the bolt, and I scribed around the perimeter of the bolt there, and now I'm cutting the lines. And if you have a sharp enough chisel, you should be able to get by without having to pound on it with a mallet. By the way, if you have wooden handled chisels, don't beat on them with a regular hammer. Use a wooden mallet, because I mean, even if they have a ferrule on there like this, it's supposedly supposed to keep them from, you know, spreading apart, but the wooden mallet on wooden chisels is, well, what you're supposed to do. Takes a little bit of time, but it's not an awful lot. Just keep going around. Then you come back, excuse me, then you come back and turn your bevel down so you can get in there and chip that out. If you turn it this way, you have a chance of skipping out and harming the rest of it. The fun part about this is that you get to play. Play at being an engineer, maybe. And you, oops, come on. You, get to be one with the wood. Another thing is that it's quiet. And remember, bevel down. And you'll know when you get the level is right, it's when you start doing what I'm doing now and it chips out, and when it starts wanting to flake or be reluctant to let the chips out, then you know you've gone too deep with the chisel. Alright, looks pretty close. That went a little, that's the flake I was talking about where it didn't want to peel apart because you didn't go, I pulled off more than. So let's see how the nut fits. Look at that. Can you see it? Alright, so this part will go into this hole here, and the bolt coming through, I've got to cut this off. Where am I at? I've got to cut the bolt off a bit, because remember I said the threads, the bolt's too long first off, but the threads ended up out here, so I've got to cut it off. That's the reason why I had to put a die on it and add onto the threads. But the premise or the idea here is that the portion of this nut will fit into the lid right here, and this here will be glued onto this, so that when it comes through the bottom, I'm on the wrong side of this damn camera, and plus it's dark. Hang on. All right. When the bolt comes through the bottom, it's going to come into this piece, which is going to be glued to the top, which is over there. See, over there. And then this bolt will come through, and then that'll suck down the top to the vessel. And I'll get all that geared up here in a second, and I'll show you, well, not in a second, it's going to take me a few more moments, and I'll get back at you. Well, this is Monday, May the 8th, and I had full intentions of finishing this yesterday, and it turned out that my plan of using the hot melt glue gun to glue that bridge that slips in between the vessel there would work, and I could carry on. And the very minute I put the bolt in there and secured it, the top to the vessel, and it popped off. And it's kind of peculiar because any other time I use the hot melt glue anywhere and it spills onto something, and it's a bear cat to take off. And so I had to change my mind, and so now the bridge, I put real glue on it and clamped it overnight. I have a rule with glue that it's got to be in clamps for at least 8 hours, so in order for it to do its job. Now we're going to take it apart. And you remembered the captured nut. If you look down there, you can see it shining right there. And beneath this, drilled into the top plate, is a wider hole with a washer in it. And that washer allows the nut not to slip past this down into here, but yet allows the end of the bolt, because of the deeper hole drilled into here, allows the end of the bolt to go through, well, a little bit, and make sure that it captures, or it gets into the captured nut. And I've got a witness mark here and a witness mark here to show which way this thing goes in there. And I've got the bolt painted and the washer painted, and now it's just a matter of putting it together so that I can mark out the perimeter of the top, so I can cut it and then get it to so it takes a little bit of fussing with. There we go. Let me see if you're seeing what I'm seeing. So I just take this little screw daddy thing, and you can see that the top is flush with the vessel. And now here's the next trick. And if you guys don't have excuse me, if you guys don't have any of what I'm about to show you, you need to go get some, because they're good for shims, they're good for all kinds of things. And so what it is just a piece of Formica shim, and I'll use that. And that's the reason why I cut the top 6 inches, because the box is 5 inches, so that I can make sure that I have, enough. I didn't want to cut myself short, in other words. So, and the grain is, it's kind of weird, because the grain is running this way. Speaking of which, if you notice the grain, the reason I laid out those that chalk line was to make sure that the grain carried on around the perimeter of the box. So what you do is or what I'm going to do is take the Formica shim and lay it on each side and mark it out. What this is doing is providing me the least minimum routing, or when I flush cut this with the router, so that I don't have to, well, have so much, take away so much wood. And as long as I cut outside of this line, then there's only like a 1/16 of an inch, maybe not even that much, that I have to take off with the router, so that I don't have to, so there's no chance of destroying the grain and making more work. So here in just a second I'll take it back apart and we'll go over and cut them off. All right, we're back over here at the cutest bandsaw ever. Back over to the workbench. When I say back over to the workbench, it's like there's the cutest bandsaw ever, and then over here, so it's like a 20 some odd foot trip. And so now we put it back together again. It's like Back to the Future. Remember, I got the witness mark right there. And we slip it back in there. Now this is where things get technical. Oh, come on. There we go. Now what that bridge does, that little plate does, is it registers the top so that it can't move, even with the bolt in there. If I had just the plate, or that bridge in there, if I didn't have that bridge in there, then the top could technically move. But with that bridge in there, it prevents that from happening. And now Now you can see the top is just a little bit proud of the perimeter of the box. And so I'm going to set up the router with a flush trimming bit, and we'll trim this off so that it's flush with this, and then we can move on with the finishing process. I mean, putting the finish on it. So I'm going to go off camera and set the router up, and then we'll pick it up in a bit. Okay, I've got the router set up here with a flush trimming bit, and it's a smaller, shorter, you know, on the knives part of it. And this is an old Porta-Cable from the 60s, and it's referred to in the old woodworking tools people, old woodworking machines, as the R2D2 model, because it kind of looks like R2D2. Anyway, and if you remember, the base is floating in there, and I didn't want to clamp it too awful hard. This is just to keep it from spinning, but if you clamp it too hard, and because it's floating in there, it could have had a chance to pop the joints. And then these are just holding the hand screws. And so let's see what happens. By the way, if you ever find one of these somewhere, get one, because they're a sweet little thing. All right, now I'll go off camera and I'll sand this down a bit, and we'll come back in a bit, and well, when I'm ready. Okay, now we're back, and I've got the sanding all done, and the client wants a slight rounded over edge on the top, which is easy. I haven't done it yet, but I wanted to take a moment and show you something that is, in my opinion, the world's biggest piece of shit tool. It's called the well, you can see it right there, Porta-Cable Profile Sander. And the premise here is that you take one of these gizmos and you slide it into this little deal here, and prior to that you take this sticky little tape. I bought this at a yard sale for I don't know how long ago, and it's supposed to be sticky tape, and then you wrap it around the this doodad, and then you stick it into the tool. Well, the problem is that by the time you spend all this time wrapping it around, and then you cut it off, and you find yourself spending like an enormous amount of time, and they got all these little profiles, and it's just worthless. And it's like, I don't know what the thing cost to begin with. I never looked, but to say nothing of the fact that you got to get this sticky paper, and you can't use apparently regular paper, because I tried it once with the sticky paper that came with the thing when I got it. It is absolutely worthless to me. Maybe some of you have got it and you find it handy and it works. What I do is just use the sanding paper and a block of wood and go with it from there. It's just insane. So what I do is just take a block of wood, regular piece of sandpaper, and just do it by hand. If you don't want to go straight left and right or forward and back, you want to kind of circle it. That way you get a rounded edge. Remember, this is not heart surgery or anything like that. This is supposed to look handmade, although you could use a round over bit in a router. However, doing it this way gives a little bit more of a better appeal. And that thing over there, I swear, if I was to put, in fact, I don't know why I haven't done it yet. I'm going to put that in the yard sale and I'll sell it for 50 cents, because to me, that's all it's worth. The more I look at it, the more I just have to laugh. I'm using 150 grit here. Well, that's what the whole thing is sanded to, actually. And I'm pretty close. So now it's ready for the finish room, and I believe it will spray 3 coats of satin lacquer on it, and it'll be ready to go. I gotta send this to another colleague, not this in particular, but the dimensions, to a fellow Doug, another guy on the list who does chip carving, and he's going to chip carve the baby's name on a piece of wood for the child's name, and it'll be on one of these surfaces here. And I'll pick this up after the finish is applied, and we'll go from there. See you in a while. Okay, I've got the vessel, the lid, sanded off and rounded off as close as I could get to make it look not so much factory, but you know, the radius looking nice, and the box is fine. And the client specified a dark stain, and I've got Watco here, which is an oil base, obviously black walnut, and the kind of color that he requested or showed a picture of is what would be closely referred to as Jacobine, but this Spanish walnut here I've discovered is pretty darn dark in some woods, and I'm going to have to play with this just a bit. So you get to watch a mad scientist here determine if he has to do some mixing between these two, and which is why I have this here. All right, so I got a sample piece to put on there, and as soon as I find it, a little chip brush here, and I'm just going to draw a section out, and we're going to label this one D for Danish oil, Spanish, and then D and S if I have to mix the two. So all I'm trying to do is get to that dark color that he asked for. So we're just going to sprinkle just a little bit of Danish oil on there. Let that sit for a bit. Where am I at? And this one I want to put on with a rag. The Spanish walnut over here on where I'm pointing at here, excuse me, is a little browner than this, and I don't think that's going to be very good. Boy, there's hardly any difference at all. Okay, so let's try a little bit of a mixture. Glug, glug, glug. just might be it. Let's see. Okay, so that one was just the Danish oil. This one here was just the Spanish walnut stain, and then here's the mixture of the two. The Spanish walnut one is, I mean, they're both darn close, but this one here seems to be, I mean, a little bit lighter than this guy, but he wants to, according to the picture that I received, it's a dark stain. A lot of people think, you go, well, why are you going to stain walnut? Sometimes it's a good idea to do that. Yep. See how that is? That's almost exactly what he had in this picture, which I don't have, but that's it. Okay, that's what I'm going to go with. I think I got enough mixed up there. I'll pick this up and afterwards. Bye. Okay, and there it is, stained up, and I've got it sitting on a little plastic Tupperware type of thing, so the bottom can dry properly without sitting on the paper. I put the paper, I don't really give a damn about the bench, as you can see. The only reason I put the paper on there was to allow me to manipulate the piece around as I was staining it, and so that it wouldn't, get rubbing up against the surface of the table, and as I was turning it around, and I think it turned out pretty darn good. The color looks nice, and so the next section will be, after this flashes off, to throw the finish on it, and that'll probably happen tomorrow. I like to let stains flash off for at least 8 hours. In this case it'll be, oh yeah, I don't know, we'll see, but it'll be plenty for tomorrow. But I think it's going to turn out looking pretty darn good. Okay, well, I'm going to publish this video, and the next one will be the putting the finish on. Talk to you all later.